Muted everyone just so we don't hear me 3 times loop in. Welcome everybody, and thank you again for giving up your time to attend another online coach support session tonight. A reminder for those of you that have just popped in, the QR code is on the screen. It will not be the last time that you see that. The link I've put in the chat box is essentially where the QR code takes you anyway, so you can utilize that. Failing that, please just pop your name in the chat box and I'll get you added to our register to make sure your CPD hours get counted. So as I said, big welcome to tonight's workshop around coaching in the social corner. And way back when last summer, when I first spoke to Brent about doing these, the main reason that I wanted Brent to do these is for this topic. Brent's sort of the master in this area. I know he won't want me to say that, but he is the master. The relationship that he cultivates with players, especially younger players, it's the best I've seen. And I'd nick loads and loads of stuff of him. So there'll be lots going on tonight that you can, like little golden nuggets that you can take away. So no pressure, but A, you've got to finish on time, Brent, and B, it's got to be good.
Thank you.
So as usual, I don't mind your cameras being on. Back in COVID, we used to say this all the time because it used to affect the bandwidth, but things have moved on. So cameras are absolutely fine. If you can keep those microphones muted unless you're asking a question, just so we don't get any background noise. The chat function is open. As always, I'll be happy to answer questions or probe Brent with questions at the right times throughout. Just need to touch on safeguarding as always. I'm the safeguarding lead for the event. If you do have any concerns, drop me a message. Privately, send me an email, or alternatively, you can reach our DSO, which is Sarah Pridmore, and that is Sarah Pridmore2 at SHCFA.com. Oh no. Again, there's your QR code. I'll move on. So I'm going to set the scene for these online workshops. If you've not joined us before, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, to be fair. Totally different to our on the grass stuff. All about the softer skills of coaching and adding tools to our toolkit to sort of marry up with that practical on the grass knowledge and coaching detail and tactics and practices that we've spoken about a lot at our face-to-face events. We've tried to cover a wide variety of topics. For those of you that haven't joined us before, I am going to put a link into our knowledge base where I've stored all of the previous recordings that you can refer back to if you weren't there for those workshops. So who's who? My name is Tom Measham. I'm the Senior Football Development Officer at Sheffield and Hallamshire County FA. My role is around managing everything to do with people in football. So your referees, your club officials, and you, our team officials and coaches. So I lead on our CPD or coach support program. My background is a professional coach for nearly 15 years, worked as a tutor before and still coach professionally now. And I'll hand over to Brent to do a bit about himself.
Yeah, so similar to Tom, professional coach for about the same amount of time, really. So academy coach at Derby. I've done some stuff with County FA, so Staffordshire FA. I worked for the FA before that for about 6 years with 5 to 11s in the skills program, as well as working in the girls game as well, grassroots. So yeah, a bit of experience across a few areas of the game, as well as doing a bit of tutoring on the side as well. So yeah, that's my background.
Awesome. Okay, so tonight the focus is on that social corner, and it's around understanding players across the age groups, developing player social skills and player ownership, and then an insight into those life skills and social construction, which we've touched on in the first online workshop around the environment and how to apply that in our coaching setting. And we're going to do that through focusing on knowing your players' motivations for playing football, connecting and building those relationships with and between your team, the outcomes of giving ownership, and then how to develop those life skills. Just an asterisk before Brent dives in. As I've already mentioned to those of you who were on earlier, Brent will be leading tonight, so you won't have to listen to me at all, hopefully, apart from a few questions. And just bear with me on some of the videos. The FA's, the IT system is blocking me from all of the things I used to get the videos offline to put into here. So I have had to literally video them on my phone and then put them in. So just bear with me. There's a few iffy bits at the start where I'm lining the phone up, but just bear with me on that. And apologies if it's not as clear as it normally is. So I'm going to click on and click the first slide and hand over to Brent. Right, I'm going to mute myself.
That's it. So, motivations for playing football to begin with. Yeah, so kind of what started with a video just about the motivations. I think, a lot of us on the call will have played football, would have been to it, for our first session, and even as youngsters, little kids as well, and understand that actually when we're delivering, the children are running in. We want to understand actually what they're there for and their motivations to play football in order to really tie into that and use that in order to continue to develop them with that enthusiasm that they bring to sessions. So the top three things that have come on here, that Vex kind of mentioned on that video was, fun, that social connection, and fitness are the top three. And ultimately, they're the things that we really want to kind of hone in on, especially to help players continue to really, really develop themselves within sessions. Next one for me, Tom. So yeah, if we start with fun, so using those players that do come with fun, making sure that when we are like planning sessions, etc., we are trying to keep it relatively tied in with the game. They'll a lot of them will see the game at the top level if they're watching Premier League football, or even their professional team that's near them, local to them. So trying to keep it relatively like the game in terms of utilizing goals and goalkeepers is always a good thing. Pretty much everyone, I don't know anyone who doesn't like scoring goals, probably apart from the keepers who like stopping them. But utilizing goals is a massive thing, as well as that point system. You can do a mundane game and then suddenly you'll have seen I'm sure your sessions with boys and girls, as soon as you put in those points, the difference in terms of intensity, that in terms of how they go, because competition's in there as well. Which leads me on to the next one in terms of that interference. And it doesn't have to be against someone in order to be competitive. It might just be the area you use is quite tight, so there's a lot of interference, and the challenge is not to bump into someone. How can you get to the other side without bumping into someone else to get some points? And it's just utilizing the things that make sure that they do enjoy coming back. And that's the one thing, the love of football is there for them all to see, and making sure we utilize that to keep them coming back. And lastly, invasion games, the principles of them is attacking and defending. You see, even on the playground, or when players playing tag, for example, that element of I'm running away and I'm being chased, and that kind of invasion game element. And some of the best games that we used to use at Derby for even our S&C were really good in terms of getting players to make those movements to really push themselves as well. So the fun element is a massive one, really. Next one for me, Tom. Yeah, it's that social connection, which is obviously what a lot of tonight is all about. So things to consider as well. Obviously, when you've got your sessions, is making sure you allow time for the players to catch up. I know we've talked about this in the first one, especially after COVID at Derby. Or around COVID, obviously, we came back and it was a case of not being in buildings, and it was a case of, right, you come in, you do your session, you ticked off. So I don't know if you can remember, you used to do the temperature checks, straight to the pitch, train, and then straight home. And then as soon as obviously the restrictions were relaxed, we started to utilize our change rooms again. And actually, it was a really big thing that we'd missed, that we found with the groups, in terms of they came in, they trained, they went home. There was no time for the boys to actually talk to each other. Now, don't get me wrong, they've probably all got each other's numbers to message and WhatsApp and do what all kids do now. But actually to be together in a changing room, to actually have a discussion before, we missed that a lot. And so that was a big part of when we got back in, of actually using that time in the changing room before we went out, in terms of putting things on the board, what the session was going to be, who the players were to focus, and actually for them to just have a chat with each other for a good 15-20 minutes after a long day at school, etc. So we very much built that into our sessions, really. And what you found was actually players were turning up earlier and earlier for that as well. So that was always nice. As a bit of an example there. I've let players obviously pick sides. Now, obviously, you can imagine being mindful of the age you've got. You don't want to necessarily go into that situation where you've got players picking the best players. There's always going to be someone left as well, and it's always the same players. There's certain games you can do which can do that. There was a captain's game I think I used to play, where you'd play a small game and each player would get the chance to be a captain and pick first. So that means everyone does get a chance to pick teams, and those teams may change slightly different. We did that a lot on holiday courses back with the FA as well. But yeah, letting the players kind of have that ownership to pick sides, but obviously being mindful of who's picking who and managing that is certainly something to consider. Variety of team talk. So again, team talks can also sometimes be seen as, right, I'm stopping it and I'm, as a coach, I'm going to speak to the players. And actually, sometimes it might be best for you have a discussion first, either as a group or split the group in half. What sometimes is better, depending on the characters you've got in your group, is actually pairing them up. Because obviously in a big group, you're going to always have the characters who speak more and the ones that will let them happy to have other people speak more and kind of drift into the background. Whereas when it's two and you pose a little question, they kind of have to speak or listen. So they're kind of involved, even if they don't have an idea, they can listen to the person. And then you can obviously then feed that hopefully back into the group. And then lastly, it's just things like, asking open-ended questions to encourage that interaction, rather than your closed questions, which will usually elicit a yes or no answer or one-word answers. Can you skillfully try and get players to elaborate on what they're thinking and what their opinions are in terms of training or games, or what you think they could do next to progress an activity? So that's kind of another little way to kind of really encourage that social connection, both with the players and with the coach. Next one for me, Tom. And fitness, which obviously is a given. I know obviously sometimes the younger ones, it's not necessarily the one thing that they're coming for, but in terms of that window, in terms of to really groove in different movements at that younger, especially foundation phase age, where you're looking at your ABCs, your agility, your balance, your coordination, your speed as well. It's a really, really good chance to utilize your sessions to develop those. So things like pitch dimensions will affect that in terms of tight pitches will allow for more agility because there's not as much space, whereas a bigger, longer pitches may actually get, well, probably more high speed running for your players as well. Constraints again to maximize movement or time of the ball. So you might utilize rules in order to keep players on the ball as well. Locking them in certain tight areas as well might again suggest that they do certainly different types of movements. And then thinking about who you partner players up or match them up with. So when you're doing teams, who are they up against? Are they playing against someone who is as quick as them? Is it someone who's not? So will they actually need that speed or that strength against someone? And really, really kind of thinking about those individual battles across the game, if you're playing a game, or within any practice in terms of what you're asking them to do physically as well. On to the next one for me, Tom. So moving on to the next one, I think connecting before coaching, and this is something that I know obviously Tom was very, very complimentary at the start in terms of the social thing, but I always think that this is probably the biggest thing. And I think everyone in the world wants connection. I'm sure of it, and our children are no different. And I think that's what I always feel in terms of me personally coaching, is if I can connect and I can understand a child, then I can hopefully motivate them and develop them. I think without the connection, I find it very, very hard to manage them. And maybe it is doable, but in a long-term kind of capacity. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So looking at obviously on the screen in terms of the moment the player arrives, whether it's a first session or whether it's just the usual session each week, these are things to just think about in terms of that first impression. If it is a new player, how are they greeted at the game? Things like using their names, of course. I think this day and age now we've probably gone away from more nicknames as well, so it's more unless they're comfortable with that, but like names, so that they actually know that you're talking about, they're talking to them, etc., and making sure that they feel involved and valued about being there. The start of the session is a chance to build a relationship with them, to ask them other questions, what's going on away from football, if you know things, if they play basketball, again, how are they getting on with that? Any other hobbies, brothers, sisters, the family, all these things show them you care, which moves on to the next one really. And just back one for me, please, Tom. Yeah, and then yeah, it just shows that you care and actually that they are of some consequence to the session. I know we've mentioned this in the first one, in terms of the environment, but trying to, in every session, to make sure that that something is said. There is a development to every single player in an hour you have. So whether you have a dozen, 16 players, you make sure when you go through that hour that they come with you, that actually you do have a touch point on them all, like at some point. For some it might be in the session, for some it might be before, about what you're saying, but making sure that you connect with everyone with across that session. It's a chance to explain the arrival activity, the session topic, and then in some cases, mentioned there actually, it might be you're doing a certain topic tonight and you've got a certain role for a player. So as they're arriving, it's a good chance to actually maybe prime them, and kind of let them know what you're looking for them individually tonight and why you're doing the session, etc. So that's another way of kind of really connecting them and actually preparing them for the session that you're going to do tonight or the game. So this is something that I had at Derby. It's something that we put in place for all the players that we got. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we knew all the stuff about the players. So, these are a few things. And obviously, if you wanted to make something like this, you can put whatever you like in there. These are things that we were quite clear. So across, the highlights in football, inspirations on them. So you might get players that they say. So a lot of players would tend to say who their professionals are that they like, which then is nice for you as a coach, because then if you're looking for them to do certain things in the future, you can kind of go back and relate to that player, that is their inspiration. You've got your support network. So again, family. So you're thinking about who their family are, brothers, sisters, in some cases, dogs as well, dogs and cats and pets, other pets. Super strengths is always an interesting one, because you're not asking them what they think. We think they're super strengths. We want to know what they think their super strengths are. What are they really good at? Which also gives you a really good idea in terms of how to deal with them in terms of moving forward when coaching skills or techniques. Other than football, so again, especially the academy, yes, we know we have them for like 4 times a week, but that's not the be all and end all. So it's clear we want our young players to be doing other things as well. We take up a lot of the time in the week in terms of football. So it's what other things are you doing as well. So it's a kind of what are you doing, but also an encouragement to go and do other things. And then you may not know, but it's quite a good one, I think, because these are things that actually maybe their teammates and us don't know, things that we don't. And when we send this to obviously the parents, of course, but we ask the parents not to get involved and to let the players fill it out. So it is all in their words, which when it comes back to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can tell it's written by them because of the spelling mistakes, which is fantastic. And that's real, it's genuine, which is what you want from them. And then you've got the usual things in terms of date of birth, quarter, location. So that location starts to give you an idea of how far they travel in. So if they're not on it on a night, but they've had an hour journey in, you can kind of understand that. And that's an hour on a good day, let alone if there's traffic or rain. So it starts to give you an idea of kind of how far they're traveling. And then obviously it supports, I think the biggest thing with football, I suppose in society really, for those who like it, is usually an opening conversation with most people that like football is who you support. It's an easy one. I support this team or I support this team. Who's your favorite player? And again, that's an easy one in terms of connecting with players. What this then can start to help you do then is actually once you get an idea of your group, you can then start to see where your similarities of players are. Have you got a certain group of players that all support one team or do the certain hobby outside of football as well? So that's the kind of thing that kind of helps us on here as well. I did mention about nicknames as well, because it is in this day and age something that you can sometimes get tied up in. But at the top left, it allows them to put what they would prefer to be called. So you had some saying, "Oh, my name's this," also this as well. So yeah, so on the screen there, you've got me just filled it in. So literally, that's what I showed to I think our under 10s when we did a workshop on um, basically celebrating differences and celebrating differences in people and how people come from different places and have different interests, etc. So that's what I shared with our under 10s really. On to the next one, Tom. So the benefit to know your players. So again, things that we've kind of touched on already in terms of helping you understand their motivations. Again, how you interact with them, in terms of, and their personality as well. So if you understand, like I mentioned there, in terms of journey, and they're a bit ratty when they get out of the car, you can kind of understand that and maybe not go full blown at them, and actually maybe arm around the shoulder, are you okay? And start to have a bit of an idea. We used to have a player that was always late. And for one of our sessions, and we knew that. So it wasn't a case of when they arrived through the gate, come on, you're late. Every time we knew, like we knew how far they travelled, we knew that, and it was a case of when you come in, just come in. Don't worry, we get it. We understand how far you're traveling. We understand there's traffic on the roads. Just join in. Do you understand what we're doing now? Or take a minute, and then once you understand, join in at your leisure. So it's just that little bit of a personal touch with that player that helps them feel like they're getting in. Because if you flip it the other way, and every time they arrive late, you're kind of undoing that they've really tried to get there on time, even though they were late. Are they going to want to do it next time? If they're 5 minutes late, they might just not bother coming for fear of getting, you know, lambasted as on arrival. So it's just having that personal touch with the players and understanding everyone's situations. Yeah, so it gives you insight in terms of how they may learn best. In terms of that, allow all these things that are kind of mentioned to the themes and interests amongst the group. It also gives you a more holistic view. So obviously, when we talk about coaching, we look at technical, physical, all these things, but we look at the whole thing, and we got to understand that these are people first, no matter the age, you know, whether it's under 9s, under 14s, 15s, they're people first, and they have other things going on, and actually bringing that into it, rather than just looking at the footballer, if you like, or the player. And then, yeah, identifies factors, interests, and people, which again I've touched on really in terms of role models they may have that you can utilize to really, really drive them and motivate them to develop or improve in certain areas of their game. Yeah, so before a training session, in order to connect as well, these are extra things that you may already do on the call, and things that may help. It's not something you have to do, of course, but it sometimes just helps players just be a bit more prepared for the session. So sending out outcomes for parents, just think about before training. So I think, you know, at Derby we were very open and honest in terms of like, this is what our syllabus looks like. So you kind of, this is what we're going to be working on across these weeks. Obviously we had an induction at the start of the season, so this is probably what you're going to see across the season. This is our plan. And so obviously training now and then, it's nice to be able to send things to parents and to the players and go, look, this is the session plan. When, you know, obviously I understand it's difficult knowing numbers as well, but where possible, this is what we're going to be looking at tonight. These are the things we want you to think about when they come. Explaining, setting out on a whiteboard. So at the start of the session, like I said, we utilize that at Derby, and so that on arrival they'd come into the change room, have that bit of social connection, but also on the board would be the session, it'd be the layout. And it's interesting because it's similar to school. You know, when you go into school, into lessons, a teacher will often, I mean, unless it's changed a lot since I went to school, but they'd set out, you know, what they're doing today. So what the topic is, what they're looking, their aims and objectives are for the lesson, but also what good looks like. You know, you kind of have that almost sum in terms of what success looks like. You want everyone to be able to do something by the end of the session, some of them to do that, or most to be able to do this, and some of them to be able to do this as well. So again, that's something that you can set out either on a whiteboard, or again, if you want to print something out beforehand, so that when the players arrive, they don't have to keep tugging at your jumper and going, are we having a game tonight? Are we playing a game tonight? Whereas everything's already there. They're settled, they understand, they feel safe because they know what's coming next, really. Where possible, we've mentioned already, priming players for their roles. So we've touched on this already in terms of, again, they're arriving and we're having that discussion with them tonight. I'd like you to do this. It might be, and I've touched on this before in another one, in terms of actually tonight I want this player, if comfortable, to actually deliver the session in terms of what we're happening. So it might be I took time at the start of this, at the start when everyone's arriving, to explain the game and what we're going to do today, and maybe one or two players, and go, this is the game we're going to do later, like in our skilled bit. Do you get it? Do you understand? Yeah. And then actually, in terms of part of their developing their leadership and their communication skills, they will then say, right, we're doing this bit before, and then you're around to listen, to watch, to support them, obviously if they miss anything or forget anything with the rules of the game, and then off you go and let them play. So again, that's a little bit of giving ownership in there as well. And then linking things to match day. So, you know, these are things that I'm sure a lot of you already do, but in terms of, you know, this happened at the weekend, so that's all based on that, we're going to work on this tonight. or for the weekend coming, we're going to do this, and hopefully in the game of the weekend, we'll be able to showcase and show these things as well. So just linking things to either the your own team situation or other things that you might see the professionals do. It might be you look at certain things, certain skills, etc., that you might want to link in yourself to your training sessions or the games as well. Next one for me, please. So player ownership, and you've got the main man, I believe, in Pete here, who's one of the best. Yeah, so I'm sure, as we've moved into player ownership, I'm sure we've all been in situations where we've been asked something by someone and then been dismissed out of hand, and you kind of go, "Why did you ask me? What was the point in asking me?" And I think sometimes that's what it can be with children. Children, especially the younger you go, are probably really on the most time really happy to give their opinion. Sometimes, if not too much, because there's not always a filter on children, which is some of the best things as well. So by as the guy said, in terms of planning in and maybe considering, actually would they come up with a better idea than what I'm thinking. I'm thinking where I want to go next with the session, but actually sometimes in some instances, who better to ask than the people who are playing? Sometimes who best asked about a game than the players that are playing in a game. It's all right watching and observing and thinking you can see and figure out problems, but it's actually your winger who's playing up against their defender. How are they finding it, and actually how can they solve the problem or maybe give you the answers sometimes? So it's nice to actually give that ownership and actually not be afraid to give it away. And I know sometimes it can look like, oh, we're letting the kids to do it today, we're not taking control, but if it's managed and planned well, it can work really well. And these are some of the benefits here in terms of, that's been mentioned there, in terms of, motivation, engagement. When players feel like they're in control or have an element of control, it certainly drives them to being more engaged in the process and in the sessions. Their thoughts, making them feel valued, are really, really positive things for them as well. But it's also responsible for their learning as well. So I know in the past, in various environments, whether it's been academy, skill center sessions, grassroots sessions, I'm sure we've all had players who sometimes are a bit hard to manage, quite emotional. And what I've tended to do and has seemed to work quite well is that code of conduct thing. So you get the group together and go, actually, what does good look like? What is a code of conduct? What does good behavior look like? What does negative behavior look like as well? And you get them to have a buy-in and go, okay, well, can we all agree that we want this? And you maybe get them to write it. You know, what are the things that make a good behavior? And they'll come out with the answers. Someone who listens, someone who tries their best, someone's committed, someone who helps others, someone who doesn't shout out, and so on and so on. And then you get them to answer. So they're all answering, and you go, okay, are you happy with this? Are you happy with those things? Tend to all say yes. Okay, you might even start to throw in, okay, but what if someone doesn't do these things and actually elicits negative behavior? What do you think should happen? And you go, oh, it might be we sit out for 2 minutes, so maybe have a timeout. You kind of go, okay, is everyone happy with that? Yeah, yeah. And then what I've done is actually print it up. So note it down, then go away, print it up really nice for them and go, okay, are you happy to sign this? And by signing it, I'm not going to force any players to sign it. Said if you want to sign it, you're happy with that, then they do. They tend to. And what you tend to find is 99% of the group are doing it anyway. They're already behaving, they're already doing the things you say, but because they're doing it, and actually sometimes you can actually give it to the player you're looking to actually support more than the rest, give them ownership of this, then they're signing into it as well, and they're buying into the code of conduct, if you like. And that tends to feel it because they've made it, that they are responsible for their own learning and their own behaviors as well. And if you move to the next one, that sense of empowerment, like they're in control here, really works. But even though we know we've set it all up to ensure that the boundaries are put in place, which is kind of what we touched on in the environment session at the start. Enhances decision making, creativity, of course, in terms of giving them ownership, so giving them license to try things and problem solve as well. And then obviously communication and leadership skills. I've already kind of given a bit of an example of one I did earlier in terms of obviously those players delivering to the rest of the players rather than myself. So again, it develops those communication leadership skills as well, which carefully selected can really help with some individuals in the group. So this is a little game by Sally. I'm sure you all know. So yeah, just have a little watch of this. Oh, hopefully if it works.
My computer went absolutely doolally then. Just bear with me. I'm going to click it again. Right, I'm going to try again. It's doing it again. It's going. My computer the screen is flashing on and off. I'm absolutely no idea what's going on.
It's fine. So I can describe the game.
I can't get going.
I hope everyone on the call's all right.
I have no idea.
Skip to the next one, Tom. Yeah,
I can't click. My screen is flashing on and off. Let me try and catch it the next time it flashes on. I'm actually stuck here because I've got nothing on the screen to click.
So while you're trying to find that, I'll describe the game that Sally was playing. So it was parallel games.
Brent, people are saying it's playing on their screens.
Oh, is it? I'll shut up then.
All I've got is a black screen and me and you.
Likewise.
Can you let us know when it finishes?
I can't see it, so someone in the crowd will have to let you know. In the audience,
it shouldn't have stopped already because it's longer than that. But I do not. My computer's caught itself up and is now showing me everything. I'm gonna try one more time. I might have to regret it. No, it's done it again. I'm going to leave it though because I can hear it this time. Oh, no, I can't. This is a new one.
The art of technology.
I'm going to get the original link for it.
No problem. Still flashing for you?
All I've got's a black screen again, and me and you.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this will sort itself out in a minute. And but while kind of we're on, I'll kind of describe what it is. I know obviously most in the audience will probably have watched it or are watching it, if you like, but it's obviously two parallel games, and the way Sally sets it up is actually they are linked. So you've got a scoring system that goes across both pitches. It just means that obviously the players can think about obviously what they're doing on their pitch, but they kind of have to always think about what they're doing with on the other pitch as well. So as you can see, or hopefully you can see it in the games, they started to play and it was yellows v reds on each side. As the game went on, the focus started to get more and more onto actually what's the rest of the team doing. Sally kind of set it up so that players could move from either side, and there was a 3v3 on one side, a 4v3. She had an overload as well. So that's how it tended to kind of go through. Sally then has a bit of a team talk through the middle, and actually it's interesting because what she tends to do. Oh, hopefully we're back. Can you skip to the next one, Tom? But after it, without playing it. I guess that's a no. There we go. Yeah, so the observations after it were things that happened. So like I was saying, is that she gave them a bit of a chance to speak to that discussion midpoint, which is obviously one of the observations there. Obviously they could transfer pitches. So actually it was interesting because when they went and played again after the discussion, I think the Reds take a 2-0 lead on the pitch on the right, and instantly it prompted the player to go across. So they're thinking already, well, actually, if they're 2-0 up, we need to win on both pitches. I need to go across and help them. They sound like they need help there. And actually, by creating an overload, they brought it back to 2-1. Second point in there in terms of that discussion, tactics midpoint. So again, sometimes you can set players up. This group, can you think about this? How are you going to do this? Again, prompting questions. How are you going to do this? Whereas you go to the other group and you might pose them a different question or the same question, depending on what you want to get out of it. It is key not to try to just set them off and not listen. Again, it's interesting, and you can see the way Sally does it in the session, that she's on the outside, she's nearby, but not interfering with what they're saying. So she's close enough to hear, but not interrupt it, so that she can see what are they talking about? Are they on task? Who are the people that are leading the conversation? Who are the people that maybe stood at the back? So again, if you've got someone who's not saying much, but in and around it, you can also maybe have that little bit of a drive-by into that conversation with them. Did you understand what they were talking about, or what were your thoughts? So you're still checking their understanding as well, even though they're not necessarily speaking in the group. And then the third thing, I think, noticeably, once they played again, they were noticeably louder in the second game because they were discussing more. The state of the game was changing. They needed other players to understand and know that, which, like we've talked about, allowed that communication to really develop, and leaders start to form as well in terms of that competitive element of trying to win the game on both pitches as well.
Right, before I move it on, can I just pick up on that last point, because it's something it's commonly asked at CPD or coach support events or on courses, is how do I get my players to communicate? Do you want to just sort of unpick that is a skill that has to be taught like any other?
Yeah, it's one of those. You'll always have in a group pretty much the louder ones and the quieter ones, and sometimes it's just about you as the coach understanding that and knowing that and just picking the right moments to kind of put in there. So if someone doesn't speak, just asking them a question in front of the group might not be the best one in terms of developing them to speak in front of others. But actually, like I said, if I go back to what I said earlier in terms of actually we're in a group of 12, and actually just pair up, and I want you to talk about how we can affect the other team in this game. They'll then in pairs start to have a discussion. So in a smaller group, they may feel the confidence to speak to another player, especially if you pair them with someone that's either in their unit on the pitch where they're playing, or someone they're really close with as well. So they're opening up. Then you go, oh, I like that idea, and that's fantastic. Do you mind sharing that with a group? So again, you're asking them to share it, and you're not telling them to share it. You're asking them. So again, they've got the choice to say, oh no, I don't want to. And then if they don't, brilliant. Do you mind if I share it to everyone for you? Then brilliant. And then you can see how that idea the group is sharing. Go, oh wow, that's really good. Thanks. So that's a kind of skill in terms of trying to coax them out of their shell, if you like, and be a bit more a bit louder in terms of communicating with others as well. So that's kind of something that definitely is on the radar for coaches in order to develop.
Yeah, I think that's what you've just done there is really, really vital skill, because we can sometimes be a bit too keen to go, well, they don't talk, you're talking. And you can use cold calling. It can be a tactic, but what Brent's just mentioned there around, maybe we can call on them in those smaller, in those pairs or in those threes, rather than in front of the 15, 16 players that you've got. Those little insights are really, really important, because what you can do, if you push too hard, you might push it the other way, where they really resent it. No, it's really, really interesting.
I think if it does go back to, I know this one is really, really going back to environment tonight. I know I'm touching on it loads because it is so important. But I know we talked about psychological safety. Now, how many people are on here? 36 people on this call. So I put us all in a room, didn't know each other, and asked a question. Some would be more happy to put their hand up and answer than others. Some would be like, "Oh no, I don't want to answer, because what if I'm wrong in front of 35 other people that I don't know?" Like, that's exactly how children would feel sometimes. I don't want to say it because I don't want to be called out. I don't want to be shamed, which is why it's important to make sure the environment where possible is safe, that we go, look, we're all here. No one's going to have a go at anyone for putting their hand up and getting something wrong at all. We're all here to help. We're all here to get better. And actually, we'll learn. You learn better sometimes from getting things wrong, from making mistakes, like we all know at times. So it's just developing that environment in order to make them feel safe, in order to then develop the communication and leadership skills as well. So it happens in probably most room that adults are in. Meetings, it happens all the time. So yeah, it's just thinking about that and then dialing it back for the children, really, and just understanding that they are as fully formed in terms of their ideas and concepts of this as we are.
Okay, I'm going to press play.
I,
I don't know what's going to happen.
Hopefully it plays. So yeah. And that's it. Tom, if you can move on. Yeah. So I just want to give everyone just a bit of an idea of Risky Business. I'm sure some of you on the call have seen this game, Risky Business. It's probably one of the best games I've seen and done, really, with players. And just wanted to kind of think about, before we move on to the next slide, like the things he said and actually where the social elements are going to come. So if you think about the makeup of the game in terms of the players on the sideline, the situations they've been given, as well, and then if you have a look once they play it. So I think we're going to go to another group that are playing it and have a look at the reaction of the players, have a look at what could be developed as well. So not only what happens, but actually what could be learning as well. So young children learning a game. So again, as you imagine, the more they play it, the better they get at it. So these are a few things. So rather than taking a couple of minutes, I think we've kind of had a little chat about it. So then think about, yeah, the attacking team. What does it look like on the pitch into the communication leadership? What does it look like off the pitch in terms of the rules, in terms of the scenarios as well? So, you know, when I've tended to play this, depending on the numbers, I've tried to do bigger numbers, so obviously more players are involved all the time as well. So you constantly have that constant churn of players on, off, on, off. And actually, what they've got to then start to think about is who's getting involved as well. Defending team again, so when the ball's in, so again, communication, who's going. So if it's only two from one side and you've got three people, which two are going? So you've got to communicate with who's going to press the ball, who's going involved when it switches from side to side as well. So these are little things as well that decisions that players have got to do and got to think about. Yeah, so as you can see there, you can see the reaction from the sideline as well in terms of the players like fully invested in it, in terms of the game, like really cheering on. So again, you've got that sideline in terms of really getting everyone going for it. Here's observations here. So reaction on the sideline, a goal scored, and also from the flip side, if a defending team, if they stop it, there's, you know, a player misses it or save, there's that reaction as well, which really finds the buy-in for the team. You've got encouragement with the teammates within the game, from the side. You've also, I don't know if you heard it in there, was one of them saying, don't shoot. So again, managing the overload to make sure they get into a good position to score if they have got that overload. The discussion on scenarios. So I think that's one of the biggest things, even when I do this, is actually when I'm playing to keep it going, is when I come to the next ball, when one ball's done, is the next group should be ready. So if you're one of the two or three that are off, you should have that ready. So where, even though the game's going on, they're having a discussion like who should go next. If they need a player as well who's come off, who needs to go back on, it's a 4v3, 4v2. Who's it going to be? How are they going to decide? How do they negotiate? Actually, I've just been on twice in a row, so now I'm going to be off. And these are little skills that you want them to work on, but you need to obviously manage as well to make sure like the same player isn't doing every single one and not letting everyone get a go. Yeah, decision who's involved in the attack and decision who defends as well. So communication, you saw quite a few goals there where no one went, no defender reacted. So you're thinking about transition with the game, winning the ball, losing the ball. That kind of comes into it. And as well, now, you know, if the game's going in a certain direction, actually, can we ask the group in terms of what do you think we could do next? How could we change the game? What scenarios do you want to put in? Do you want to put in a 5v3? Do you want to put in a 1v1 in there, or 2v2? So asking them, how many points do you think they should be worth? Oh, okay. So now they feel like they're involved in their making some of the decisions as well. So next one, Tom, please.
Yeah, just before I move on,
Yeah.
Again, it's really interesting. Like the focus tonight is on the social corner. I think these are some really good insights into this is our day-to-day stuff. It doesn't have to like be in your face and hey, all right, everybody, we're doing social tonight. The players don't need to know that we're almost in their heads and getting them to do stuff that might be slightly different to what they're doing. But those little bits there that Brent spoke, even just the little bits of negotiation of it's my turn now, you've been twice, they're vital skills, especially for younger players to learn. But I just want to really reiterate when we talk about players, holistically across the four corners. This is a really good insight into it doesn't have to be in your face. We're doing social tonight. This is a really exciting attacking or defending or counter attacking or defending the counter attack session, but you're getting loads of social outcomes within it just by forcing the players to have to organize themselves and not saying it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn, and forcing them to negotiate. So I think it's really good insight into getting loads of great returns without actually really like announcing that we're working on social stuff. So I just wanted to pick that up.
Yeah. No worries. I think ownership is, before you play here, Tom, I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because if you never give ownership to players, you never give them time to talk or to make decisions. When you do give it them, you will have to manage it and manage. But if it's something that you do constantly build into your sessions, you'll find that it will hopefully support you in your session, and they'll get really good at it. And actually, they'll start to tell you more things and lead more things. You know, you might have a team, I think me used to do it, where teams would do their own warm-ups. So they come in, so you go, well, I don't need to do the warm. They know how to get warm at certain ages. They just do the warm-up. They know what's needed from it, and they do it at certain ages. At school, they do that. You know, it's expected that they do that. But if they're never given the ownership to do it or shown or nudged along, they'll never do it. So there are things to kind of consider, really. You go, Tom. Yeah, so a few things, a few more kind of things really that kind of touch on everything we've mentioned tonight in terms of, you hearing some of the players talked about being rewarding to hear it and actually have an impact in games as well, in terms of the coach took on board what I thought as well. So this one, in terms of life skills and social construction to kind of finish. So this is kind of a quote from the World Health Organization, and life skills are what we want everyone to have, obviously, and especially the young children growing up as well. They're going to have to deal with life, if you like, and football can sometimes, in some situations, mimic that. Especially, you look at the top level now in terms of referee decision, for example. It's something that I've never. I can't really say I'm not too fussed about, because ultimately, going onto a pitch, referee's probably going to make a mistake, and I'm comfortable with that. I know when I go into there, I know that, and I'd like the players to understand that as well. You are probably not going to get every decision go your way today, and how are you going to manage that? And that's the same with life. Sometimes we'll be in difficult spots, so that's how we kind of look to prepare our young people for life, if you like, really. Next one for me, Tom. Yeah, so in terms of football, how it can teach life skills. So again, you've got all the things on the screen there that will come out of just playing the game of football, in terms of obviously the things we've talked about, communication, collaborating, these are life skills that they're getting all the time. And I think sometimes from a coaching or staff member point of view, it's just us kind of shining the light on these things that they are doing, and actually celebrating when they do them, or if they do improve them and develop them as they go forward, really. I think managing emotions and dealing with adversity is certainly one that I think resonates with me the most, because ultimately, um, that's the thing can affect performance a lot. Really, if you're focusing on things you can't control, then you're not focusing on necessarily on the things you can control, if you like. And then, yeah, how to coach them. So again, communicate to these things. Be taking opportunity to be open and honest, transfer it to players and parents. So we've kind of talked about that in terms of session plans, or what we're doing today, and this is how we're going to do it. Allowing them to communicate as well. So not always listening to the coach, it's actually the coach listening to the players. Reinforce. So again, using other things, using real life examples. I think a lot of my team talks, I try to use real life examples, etc., to kind of, like, I don't know about how the schools you went to, but you used to go to primary school, and always used to be a story at the start of assembly and then a moral at the end of it. And that tends to be along the line of my kind of team talks would be along those lines, rather than today we're going to try and do this. Sometimes it'd be a story, because storytelling can be quite powerful as well with players as well, in terms of bringing things to life and helping to explain, as well as obviously, as it says on here, using real life professionals, video footage as well. I remember using, I think it was the Man U Liverpool game a few years ago with the under nines, when I think it's when I think Rashford threw his arms up because he didn't get a free kick, and the player that he was meant to be marking went and scored. I can't remember who it was now. It was Fabinho, I'm not sure. But actually, I got our analyst at Derby to clip that up, and we, before our session, had to talk about resilience and talked about our reactions. And we discussed his reaction in terms of Rashford, in terms of losing the ball, and his reaction, and actually then the consequences to his reaction. Because if he'd just turned and actually chased back and gone after his player, he may have stopped them scoring. But instead of throwing his arms up in the air and showing the crowd of his disbelief of the decision, his unhappiness, they scored from it. And you kind of think, yeah, and that really brought it to life for the players on that evening. And then reflection. So as coaches, we reflect as well. So actually, can we find time for players to reflect? Sometimes it's not straight away after a game, because I've just been running around straight away, or a training session. It might be they need a bit of time. It might be actually reflect after. So can you remember Sunday? Can we have, before we start, can we just have a few discussions about Sunday, what we thought went well, what didn't as well? As you know, sometimes you'll have, I'm sure on the call, you'll have arguments, and then you go away from the argument, you calm down, and then you think, oh, I wish I'd said that in the argument, because you've already reflected on what's happened. So now tie that into like football, in terms of actually, I've just played, oh, I wish I'd done this, or maybe if we'd have done this, we'd have had a better chance, etc. If I'd have reacted better. So sometimes giving the players, individuals or groups, chance to reflect is nice for them as well. And lastly, we move on to social construction. So I know obviously this we certainly touched on it in the environment session. So again, it's just making sure that we're kind of using the theory and going along here to build our relationship with the players, to making sure we celebrate the exceptional, but also we create the boundaries. I think that one of the biggest things to support the social corner is the environment that you put in. So making sure the boundaries that you set up are clear for everyone. And actually, if someone is going to go out of the box in the same way that I think I mentioned it when I delivered it, out of the box, it's how can we get them back in the box, and how quickly can we make sure that they understand what's acceptable at the club, and praise that when we see it. And then, yeah, I think lastly, we work hard to create the environment, but we work hard to maintain it. I think the behaviors that we obviously elicit will obviously contest us as coaches, but obviously we need to have to make sure that we're regulated as well in ourselves and how we deal with it, so that we can obviously help regulate the children in our care as well. So have a plan and kind of try and help with the interventions. Some planned, some not. Sometimes they will be off the cuff. You have to deal with things in the moment, but where possible, where you can plan intervention and plan social interaction with players as well to develop your relationship with them and hopefully help them develop themselves. I think that's pretty much it, Tom, isn't it? Is that right? It's 3 minutes past 8, so I'm a bit over, and you're muted.
Yep. So, firstly, big thanks, Brent. Some really insightful stuff there. And I think what really stood out for me, it's nice for me to sit back and sort of listen. What really stood out for me is kind of what I was making that point of earlier, that this stuff doesn't always have to be like in your face, loud. These are just some of these subtle bits and bobs that we add to our toolkit that can really help benefit our players and develop our players holistically across the four corners. That really, really stood out for me tonight. The stuff around sort of the art of asking questions and then not being there, not being where they can see you, and sort of stepping back and listening and looking at who's contributing. Some really, really good skills. I popped in a question matrix. If you haven't checked in the chat when Brent was referring to asking questions, I've just popped a question matrix in. And if you really want to get them thinking, you want to be using the bottom end. So instead of, you want to be asking players sort of how and why, not always really simple like what's. And if you can sort of have questions that do that, you'll start to get better conversations, which ultimately is great for you because you spark those conversations between the players. So that's in the chat, and I'll put that in the follow-up email for you as well. Ryan, I'll come on to that in a moment. I just want to open it up to the floor. Firstly, if there's any questions at all for Brent, or any examples that you want to pick out from Brent or anything like that, now's your time to either raise your hand or pop it in the chat, and then I will do a bit of a mop up about what's to come moving forward. But if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask now. I think the register, and again, just a reminder for those of you that if you did come in late, the register QR code's there, and the link is also in the chat if you want to just click that. I think we strike fear, Brent. No one ever ask questions. Just while you're thinking, then, because we always get questions at the end. Yes. So, Ryan, you've asked a very good question. We do have a provisional, well, we have this workshop, we have advertised it, and it's around how to get better at observing your players. What I'm going to say is there's a bit of an asterisk on that, just because we planned the 6 months ago, and the workshops have taken their own shape, and you've seen tonight there's been some overlapping. So me and Brent will probably meet just to double check that we're happy to stick with that. It might be that we come back and say, we've seen you've signed up, but we've tweaked the topic. We will also pencil in a date because that had a TBC date on it, again, just because it's quite difficult for us to plan our diaries 6 months in advance. So me and Brent will have a chat about the date and the content, and that was the 6th and the 6th that we planned. So there will be at least one more. That's not to say we won't continue these. That will be based upon the feedback that we get from you when we can sort of come to the end of this series, if you will. So that one is on the agenda. I've spoken about goalkeeping on all of these workshops. Now, anyone that was interested in goalkeeping that's in the coaches community was contacted about this last week. We've put on an introduction to coaching goalkeeping series, and you think, why are you talking about this? It's fully booked. I'm just bringing it to your attention. So what we've done is a 3-series event that you're required to attend all 3. It has gone fully booked based on contacting everyone in the coaches community. I've got a nice waiting list for it as well. That's telling me we need to do this again. And I've had a lot of emails asking about sort of this course structure that we're running here for this. So we will endeavour to deliver this again in upcoming months. So if you were one of the ones on the waiting list, or you missed it and the form's not taking any more responses, we will endeavour to put that on again. But there's a commitment to also do future goalkeeper CPDs similar to the High Performance Centre one we did in December. So goalkeeping is certainly on the hit list. Future events. We have a neurodiversity awareness training event for coaches. That is on Monday. That is at Sheffield and Hampshire County FA, 6:30 till 8:30 with the wonderful Rachel. It's a really insightful workshop and actually has loads of links to some of the stuff we've covered tonight. But neurodiversity sort of refers to conditions such as autism, for example, and it's a really good insight into the knowledge you need to help support players and make football the football environment suitable for those players, and to make little subtle changes that can really help those players. I've sat through that workshop. I say sat through like it's a bad thing. It's really, really good, and I'd recommend. We've got a couple of spaces left for that one. We have the Doncaster Rovers Academy observation, which is on the 8th of February. It is an early start. I think that might be, is that right? I think it actually starts at 5 now. I may have typoed that. That one's an early start, and we're working with Sheffield Wednesday to get an academy observation workshop on for with them as well in the near future. Just waiting for a few things to be finalised. Earlier on, you saw 2 men talking on a chair. The slightly older one, with the great tan, was Pete Sturgis, the godfather of coaching youth football. He is in town next month delivering the Play Phase workshop. That is available to book. I've not advertised it yet. It will have limited spaces. It's at Concord Leisure Centre, so we are limited to the number that we can accept. It's geared towards coaching younger players, so you're 4 to 7. Loads and loads of golden nuggets to carry through if you coach younger players. It'll be absolutely top draw, that workshop. So Pete Sturgis is back in the county in just over a month's time, which we're absolutely buzzing about. We've got some other practical face-to-face events that we're running alongside Maltby Academy. So these ones are geared towards those of you that are interested in pursuing a UEFA C in the future. These are sort of to plug the gap between an I2CF / level 1 to UEFA C. These will be delivered by Elliot Flowers over at Maltby in conjunction with us. So if any of those tickle your fancy, you can get yourself booked on. They're not on the website yet, but they will be in the very, very near future. You're the first to hear about it. And then finally, we did summer series, we did autumn series, and we are back for the spring series that will be running across sort of March and April. It will be a 5-event series. 2 of them are confirmed. I'm working on the last bits for the other ones. We have put on a tactics on a match day as requested based on the feedback we received for the workshop we did online. We're doing a practical one. So we will be bringing that workshop to life with an actual fixture, which should be really, really interesting. It's likely to be at SGP Thorncliffe, just based on the fact that the teams that I'm pulling together for that fixture. So I've probably shown you best part of 12, 13 events there. And this is just that gentle reminder. This isn't about come to everything. This is about creating variety for you as coaches to pick and choose what you come to. So this is not a call to action to say attend everything that we do. There are different titles, as you'll see on the spring series. There's attacking basically for younger players, and then there's the attacking principles, which will be a lot more in depth, and that will be for our YDP players. So if you coach younger players, we'd recommend going to the finishing the attack. If you're coaching those older players, the attacking principles might suit you better. You might want to do both. Absolutely no problem. But just a reminder, this isn't a call to arms to say get to everything. Absolutely pick and choose what suits you, and that's what we're trying to do. Put on 3 events that help you in the areas that you'd like support on. So that's what we've got coming up. We've probably got nearly 20 events between now and the end of the season. So lots to choose from, lots of great insights, lots of great deliverers. We've got loads of different people delivering across these workshops. So it's going to be really, really, really good between now and the end of the season. So I'm going to flip it back to the any questions page, but I just want to say, as usual, a huge thank you for giving up an hour or so of your time tonight. We really, really appreciate it. It's great to see the numbers on again, showing that appetite to learn and develop and again, a topic that doesn't always get a lot of attention, but there are loads and loads of quick wins and things that you can bring into your coaching, into your toolbox for the benefit of your players, which is why we're all here. So a huge thank you for attending again tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. I am staying on, as will Brent. I'm going to press stop recording now. I'll be staying on.
Thank you for watching. If you are interested in any of our upcoming Sheffield and Hampshire County FA coach support events, please visit the coach support page at sheffieldfa.com. Thank you.